The Mauritius campaign. Remember, we're trying to build up to some tabletop battles. And when I say tabletop, I mean maybe getting some actual 3D miniatures on the table, but it could just as easily be nothing but a protractor, a ruler, some dice, and a couple of colored pencils. As you can see, we've got some red ships and we've got some blue ships. Well, the blue kind of fades out here a little bit. Let's take a look at that. It's July 1809. The British are trying to take over all three islands of Mauritania. I think it's Mauritania. Mauritius? Mauritania? Well, at the time, this is the Ile de France, this is the Ile de Napoleon, and we want to make it the Ile de Breton and the Ile de I don't know who, the Ile de George. I can't remember who's the king during the Napoleonic era. Call it Ile de Wellington. He's the guy that deserves to have it named after him. In our last episode, we determined that the French ships Revenant, Caroline, Venus, Marche, Creole, and Bellone made it up to the Bay of Bombay. They are preying on the British shipping. The only thing between the French ships and those poor, innocent East India Trading Company vessels are the HMS Ceylon and the HMS Victor. Today, we're going to figure out what happens up in Bombay and how long it takes before this stuff starts to affect this stuff. It's kind of off map. Now, we do have some reinforcements down here, the Raisonnable and the Otter. By the way, the Raisonnable, the reason it's spelled like that, it's the HMS Reasonable. The British captured this from the French earlier. They did not capture Lothair, I guess. So those will be reinforcements that may or may not show up later on. In the islands right now, we've got three ships, the Leopard, the Sirius, and the Boadicea. I'm just going to keep pronouncing it Boadica because I think that's how you pronounce the female rebel. You know, it's funny. In Great Britain, they celebrate both the rebels. They're allowed to kind of celebrate both the rebels and the loyalists for their various civil wars. Kind of nice. A little jealous. Got to be honest with you. I mean, I kid. Here in America, we're allowed to celebrate the rebels. We do it all the time. We're born of rebels, and rebels we shall be till our dying day. I am rebelling against the modern world. I am rebelling against modern wargaming by throwing together this kind of late 70s, well, let's call it late 60s, early 70s style campaign. Today, we're going to figure out what happened. But before we do that, so here's the thing. Here's the deal. I'm going to go ahead and plot out the paths of the Leopard, the Sirius, and the Boetica. They are trying to blockade Port Louis, Mahaborg, now known as Grandport. Grandport? Yeah. Saint-Denis and what is this? Saint-Pierre. Let's run some numbers here real quick. That's 4 ports that need to be blockaded by 3 ships. 4 is more than 3. Sometimes people that play 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons come by, so I need to kind of explain that you've got one more port than ships, which means when these vessels, these French ships come back with their prizes in tow, figuratively speaking, they weren't always towing them, they just put prize crews on them. Larger communication. Once they get close enough to the island can tell these ships where to dock, which port is the one that is undefended. Unless there's a British ship in hot pursuit, which hopefully is a possibility. So what kind of little mini game are we going to do? Well, it's going to be pretty, I don't want to say narrative. We're going to do a little game. We're going to do some dice off. We're going to come up with a complex series of rolls to figure out exactly what's going on. And I wrote them down. But before we do that, like I said, we'd like a little, there we go. Could we get a little focus in there? Thank you. I'm going to fire my director of photography here. So I'm going to figure out where the Leopard, the Sirius, and the Boetica are and where they're patrolling and what kind of circuit they're doing and how long it takes to do the circuit so that when these ships come back, and I don't know which ones or when, I don't know how they're coming back, I don't know the wind patterns, but I don't want this to influence this. So I'm going to do this first and then figure out that. Admiral Rowley realizes that Rodriguez is largely safe. They're going to be able to get in and out of port relatively easily. I've got 3 paths here that cover a lot of territory here in the sea lanes, particularly this patch that is directly between kind of northeast of the 2 major islands. We want to patrol here heavily, and we want to just kind of keep an eye on these ports. the Leopard will start out first and do a little figure eight and come back to port on day 1. So on the first day, we have to figure out what path he takes. On day 3, the Sirius will set out. So by then, Leopard will be somewhere around here. Day 3, Sirius will be right about there. And then a couple of days later, the Boetica will come out and he'll start sailing around here. And there may be a little bit of crossage, but all 3 ships are going to be available. We now have a path that we can take. Bear in mind, these are the ideal paths that these ships can take. The winds will blow them off course. I'll probably have to use, I probably should have done this in orange so that the red would show up better. Their actual paths will vary and differ depending on the wind. But this is our grand tactical, let's call this our strategic. Grand strategic is when we start talking about Bay of Bombay. This means that when the ships up in the Indian waters start coming down, we have some patrolmen, some beat cops that are ready to whack. So now we have to figure out, well, which of these ships are going to make it down the Revenant, Caroline, Venus, Marche, Creole, and Bellone. It's a 3-to-1 ratio. But the Ceylon and Victor are pretty cagey, right? Pretty brave captains over there. And as with the last episode, we know what the captain's ratings are. So we're going to include those. Let's go down the little recipe that I have for figuring out who encounters who and who comes back with what loot. I have a 5-step process. First, each of the British ships has 1 chance to intercept a random French vessel. The captains of the 2 vessels, so I'm going to nominate one of these, the Ceylon or the Victor, and I'll roll a d6 to figure out which of these French vessels he encounters. Then the captains will roll off. We'll roll a d6, add the captain's score. The high score wins. If you double your opponent's score, you capture his vessel. If you triple it, you sink it outright. Now, I know you could probably argue that it's a lot more likely that you really want to capture, not sink. And that's why I've done double versus triple in that manner, because you're more likely to double than you are triple. And if you sink your opponent's ship, you don't get the prize money, so you don't want that. Now, the French ships that survive, so we're going to do this twice, okay, to figure out who wins what. If it's a tie, the 2 ships will sail off. We'll go through the other ship, and maybe we'll circle back around. I don't know. Like a tie would be, they spotted each other, and somebody ran away and got lost in a fog bank. The French ship probably, because they're not interested in dueling. They're not interested in actually battling a British ship. Maybe they exchanged some gunfire, but repairs were effected. Then, for step 3, the French ships that survive, so we've done the 2 British ships, they have a chance to capture an East India Trade Company ship. They're going to roll their captaincy plus a d6. If they score a 7 or higher, got them. If you roll a straight 6, so there's a couple of things happening in that die roll. If you roll a 7, no matter what you roll, if the die roll plus your captain is greater than 7, no matter what that die shows up, then you capture it. But if you roll a 6, you get to try again. You get to you actually capture that. Try again plus capture. So you capture a ship and you can try again. And if you get another 7, you can capture a second ship. If you roll a 1, your ship is damaged. And when you come back onto this map, you will sail as a hooker. We all know what that means from the last video. Go and watch it. After all the French vessels are done, they are going to sail back. And one of these British ships, the Ceylon and the Victor, gets one last chance to intercept one of the... So what we have here... Well, let me just roll through it. The captaincy plus a d6, if it's better than the French captaincy... Okay, now remember, the French have issued prize crews. So they can damage the French escort if the captaincy plus the d6 is greater than the French. If they score greater than the French captain's score plus a d6, then they have rescued the prize vessel. If they double the captain plus a d6, then they capture the French ship and its escort. Okay, so there's a lot of back and forth that could happen here. Then any British ships that take a prize or are damaged, they remain on station in Bombay. Everybody else returns to Mauritius. And when do they arrive? Well, so these are the French vessels, right? If we have 5 of them returning, we're going to roll these dice to find out when. And then we'll go ahead and, so if all 5 come up once, all 5 ships are coming in September. Good news is, the bad news is they're likely to get intercepted. The good news is a few of them are likely to get through, and that's going to be important later on. After we do this, when we bring him back on the chart, and I don't know if we'll get to this today. This might wait till next week, depending on how long this process takes. But essentially what we can do is we can run a series of monthly turns where 1 or 2 French ships come in. We compare it to this patrol, and we just go through the math. Okay, on day 1, where does that ship come in? The other thing we'll do for the French ships is we will put some numbers up here. And I think we'll probably roll like a 2d6 because this is where they really want to come from. We may have to decide which direction the wind is blowing. That's, the 2 variables are if the ship comes in from this direction or this direction. That's one variable. And then what direction is the wind coming from? So that's another one we'll have to figure out. But we haven't really done much. We just talked about plans. So why don't we go ahead and run through our little process. I'm taking notes and we will nominate some ships. We'll roll some dice. I'm going to zoom in. We will start with the Ceylon. This is a 38-gun British frigate. Historically, it was captured by the French. Which French vessel is it going to run into? I should probably put some numbers down here. Let me do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And remember, the Creole was lucky to get out of port. So we roll a d6, and he encounters the Marche. The Marche is a 40-gun frigate. Fair fight. 40 versus 38. This would be a valid time to throw the ships down on the table. But this map right here, Rodriguez, this is the table where I want. I'm still doing the vague thing, but you could do the 2 ships dueling it out and the wide open ocean. Like I said, I've already established my rules. So the next thing we do is we roll off. The captain of the Marche has a score of 2. So we're going to use the black die for him. So we're going to add 2 to this die. The captain of the Ceylon has a captain score of, where are you silly Billy? Of 1. So we're going to add 1 to this die and 2 to this die. We get a 3 and a 3, and wouldn't you know it, we have a tie, so they go off on their own. We'll call that July 10th, the Mart, because they tied, no effect. The French ship is able to escape with all hands, minimal damage. We'll give them another shot. But it is now July 15th, and the HMS Victor, this is a 20-gun corvette with a captain score of 4, is going to run into, with a score of 4, the Marche. Oh my goodness, the Marche has been cornered by the HMS Victor. Now, in this case, the HMS Victor is a small 20-gun corvette, but the captain has a score of 4. So we're going to add 4 to this die and 2 to this one. And let's see what happens. So we get a 5 versus a 7. And the high score wins, which means this time the Marche gets the better of the Victor. So the Victor's done. But because those dice rolls were so close, we're going to say the HMS Victor goes back to patrolling after the Marche escapes. Now the Ceylon gets one more chance. It's 10 days later. They have effected repairs. It's July 20th, and they encounter, this time it is the Bellone. The Bellone has a captain score of 3 versus a 4. And here we have our first doubling. So the British ship, the Ceylon, in this case, the 38-gun meets a 48-gun frigate, and we have a score of, the Bellone has a score of 4, and the Victor has a score of, I'm just double checking here, 10, which is a doubling. So because the British have doubled up the Bellone is captured. For the purposes of our campaign, the Bellone, which is captured, will not be available to the French for the rest of the year. The Ceylon is also not going to be available for the remainder of the year because it is going to have to, so let's see, the Victor is a 20-gun, I'm sorry, the Ceylon is a 38-gun frigate, and it's going to have to take its prize crew and bring the Bellone to the nearest port in India. I don't know where that is, probably Bombay itself. Bombay on the Bay of Bombay. And that means that the French are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ships that are capable of raiding. Now, the Bellone and the Ceylon will come into play in 1810. The battle has tipped in the favor of the British one more time. But we have 5 ships now. The Revenant, Caroline, Venus, Marsh, and Creole, who have a chance to capture an East India trade ship. And maybe they do that earlier in July. We don't have to worry about that. Let's just figure it out one at a time, and we'll go right down the list. The Revenant has a score of 6. This is old Captain Surcouf. If he rolls well, let's see what he rolls. So he rolls a 3. That's a 9. He beats a 7. So the Revenant has captured a prize vessel. The Caroline has a captain with a score of 6. Guaranteed he's going to capture a vessel. But if he rolls a 1, he's damaged in the process. He does not. Then the captain of the Venus has a score of 3. We need a 4 or better. The Venus is damaged and is going to have to limp back home. And why don't we say it was damaged badly? By an encounter with the Bellone. They tried to rescue the Bellone, I should say, with a Ceylon. The Venus, which is what is the Venus? It's a 40-gun frigate, tried to ride to the rescue of the captured Bellone, and it didn't go well because the Bellone, now manned by a prize crew, was basically, they were able to 2-on-1. The Ceylon was ready for them. All right, so there's only 4 ships now. Well, it's damaged, but they managed to escape, and so they're going to have to limp back to Mauritius. Then the Marche, we're going to call, I bet if I moved this over, we're going to call that a 5. I bet if I move this over to the other corner, my die will always wind up there. In fact, maybe what I should be doing is rolling it in that direction. So the Marche, who's already had kind of an exciting cruise, is going to, nope, it's always going to bounce off and land there. Now the Marche has a score of 2, so the Marche is also going to capture a supply vessel. So that's 2 in the hand. And then finally we have the Creole, whose captain has a score of 1. We need a 6, and wouldn't you know it, the Creole captures 1 vessel. Not bad for a plucky little ship with a ducky little captain. And oh my goodness, it takes a second, and it is badly damaged. The India trader that they captured had a lot more fight in it than expected. But is damaged. So now the question is, let me make one last note. So the Venus was damaged by encountering Bellone while rescuing the Bellone. I got to make a note of that. Now we have to figure out when these vessels get back home. And so after we have done that, and there is a chance, remember, that the Victor might intercept one of these ships. So the next thing we're going to do is I got to sail back. One random British ship, well, it's only one. He can make 1 intercept check against a random ship. I am once again going to roll d6, and if the result is a 5, that means the Victor didn't find anyone. So with a 3, the Victor runs into the Venus, which was badly damaged. So maybe we subtract a 1 from the Venus's captaincy, giving them a score of 2. Or we just, but they didn't have it. So let's call it a 2. And then the Ceylon only has a captain's, the Victor here. Well, the Ceylon was captured. It meets the Bellone and captured. Oh, it wasn't captured. It's the Venus is the one I'm supposed to be checking. And the Venus only has a captain score of 1. Where are you, Venus? Where are you? The HMS Victor. I keep saying, I gotta keep them straight. Names are difficult. The Venus normally has a score of 3. It's going to be a 2. So the black die, we're going to add 2. And then the Victor, the captain has got a score of 4. So it's going to be +4 to +2. And this time we get a 7 versus a 10, which means the meeting engagement on the way home is to no avail. So in this case, the Victor had a chance to intercept the Venus, but was unable to. Again, she managed to get away. All right, with all that said, now we can check for, here's my chart, for how long it takes you to get back home. I didn't roll the number less to avoid damaging shit. Roll, what is this roll? something or less. Oh, the captaincy. Okay. I don't think that's in December, right? That's the thing I forgot to point out to you. Oh, what I did. So you want to get home in either September, October, or November. We're going to add 1 to the score for those ships that were damaged. The Venus and the Creole. And that's going to tell us which month you come back in. So because the ship is damaged, it's going to take them a little longer to limp home. There's a greater chance that you are sailing in December when there's a chance. And I have, what does this say? Roll or your captain. It's your captaincy score. In other words, the Revenant here is going to return home in a straight D6, number 4. So the Revenant will return in November. Meanwhile, the Caroline will return home in October. This is going to essentially set up the turns for the rest of this tactical season, if you will. Then we have I'm going to do the Marsh, which will also arrive in November. And now we got to do the 2 damaged vessels. The Venus, I'm going to roll a D6. I'm going to add 1. There's no chance they get back in September. So with a 3, they will get back in October safely. And then the Creole, on a 5 or 6, we're going to have to make a second chance. Yeah, so now, December. The Creole limps home in December. And the Creole has a captain score of 1. It's a 24-gun Corvette. And it's already damaged. So if I roll anything but a 1, then is she sunk? Is she lost with all hands? I don't think so. What do we... Wow, this would be a disaster for them. They've already lost 1 ship. I think we just have to roll with it. So we're going to roll a 1. Anything but a 1, the ship is further damaged. Now, it's already damaged. Okay, so they make it home. Whew. Boy, that's a relief. I don't have to make any difficult choices. I like that. And it's going to return in December, which means the British are going to be on high alert. Now, this also, remember, we are trying to incorporate some land-based shenanigans. So we're going to have to wait and see what that means. For now, what we can take a look at is what happens in October. And as I said, the Caroline and the Venus are both going to be arriving in October. So what we can do tonight is ask the question, where do the ships come in? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4, 5, 6. And what direction is the wind blowing? On a 1, it'll be coming out of the northwest. On a 2 or 3, out of the north. Out of 4 or 5, northeast. And on a 6, out of the east. Now that's going to be for again. Remember, our scale is the monthly scale. This is a general average, and it's going to last for basically until these ships either meet somebody or make it into port. So the first one I'm going to check for is the Caroline. Where does the Caroline come on? On a 5, the Caroline is going to come on. Let me find, I think I have a blue pencil floating around here somewhere. That would probably be better to use. So the Caroline comes on with a 5 right here. Oh, that's purple. That's purple. It's a little, I don't know if you can see. These look almost the same, don't they? This looks a little bluer to me, but it's not. So the Caroline comes on at 5, and the Venus is going to come on at 2. So the Venus comes on here. They took a couple of different paths. And then the question is, what day do they enter the map? We'll roll 2d6 on October the 8th. So this is going to be 10-8. And then the Caroline is going to come on 10-6. So somewhere in the early part, I did that for a reason, because our British ships are going to depart on the 1st. And what I can do is figure out where they are at on the 8th, and that's where those ships will actually begin their voyage. To figure that out, I need to figure out, there's one thing I forgot. Wind direction, because that's going to be key to figuring out exactly what paths the British ships take. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I rolled a 5. Take my word for it. The wind is out of the northeast, which is to the benefit of the, I don't want to use blue because I want to use purple, because red and blue make purple. And that way there's no, now it's a little bit of both. I don't want to like tilt the odds in one direction or the other. So this is our wind in October. All right. And I think after we figure out where all of our little tabletop battles are, we'll figure out what kind of land-based battles were likely to happen if there was any raiding going on. Now, we have a lot of different variables to juggle here. So you'll have to forgive me if I pause a lot and I come on and say, okay, this is what I calculated. But I don't want to bore you with all the tedious little details, but I do want to kind of show you how this will operate. So again, on October 1st, the Leopard is going to set out. And when you leave Port Maturin, we're going to have to go, obviously they're not sailing directly into the wind. They're going to have to come up in this direction, then race down, and they've got the wind. And then here where the Leopard makes this corner, they may have to come a lot further this way and then come up further this way than they anticipated in order to cut back and forth to get back to the port. I really wish I had put these in dotted lines now. Oh well, be that as it may, let me calculate some positions on the 8th, and the Venus, of course, will come on right there, and then we may have to take it day by day. It turns out we don't have to worry about tacking. That's a thing that happens below the scale at which we can see. The Heart of Oak tells us that all of our frigates, the average frigates, can move downwind 58 millimeters and upwind 30. So I took a fighting sail approach. If you start by moving upwind, okay, I cheated a little bit here with the Leopard. Their first day, they caught a good strong breeze. Oops. But because they started pointing downwind, basically anything, in this half of the compass rose, they could move 58. So on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and I went ahead and calculated 11, 12. So on the 12th, they get back, spend a day relaxing, and then on the 13th, they'll shoot back out. And maybe we swap some of these routes around to keep them from getting bored. I'm not worried about that. So that's what the numbers are here. Meanwhile, the Sirius sets out on the 3rd. So at the end, here's our 6. Wow, is that really 58 millimeters? I gave him a lot of bonus movement. They're coming down this way. That would be 58. I probably need to recalculate this. I guess the Sirius here actually left on the 2nd for some reason. And I need to key that in. So they got a little bit of a boost. Maybe they had a little shakedown cruise. We're going to call this the 3. We're going to call this the 2. All right, just to keep it simple. They really only should have moved 3 centimeters as they came out of this port. Maybe 58 to here. It should have been 58. And then they're still kind of downwind. So maybe this puts them there. But I'm not going to worry about that, right? So this is it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then finally the Boatica, they start out. And again, I kind of split the difference. They got somewhere between 30 and 58 because they immediately hooked around this direction. And then here they're really cooking, man. They are flying with the wind. 6, 7, 8. Then they make the corner here at 9 and they slow down to just 30 millimeters per day. And so it takes them 16 days to cover their route as opposed to, and again, it was about the same here for the, who is this? This is the Leopard. Okay, now that's all important because our 2 French vessels, I probably should have laid this down a little flatter. When they come on the 18th, they don't know who's around. So we have to chart their course. And they're going to make a beeline straight for, let's put this in terms of, they're going to come down and they know that when they get to right about here, they're going to get flagged whether to go to Mahaborg or Port Louis. So their path is going to be, and we're going to keep this interesting, right? They're heading straight for, they're going to have to watch out for St. Brandon over here. But they're going to come down something like this, and we'll see if they cross anybody's path. They are hoping to get to this port. It's the safest one. The Caroline, remember we said they come on the 6th. They're going to do the same, and they're going to make largely a beeline. And man, look at that little pile of spaghetti that they have to sail through in order to get to their home port. So we're going to draw just kind of a straight line just till we get across to there. And of course, once they get to this point, they're within the inner band and things get a little more complicated. So again, they're moving downwind. So they're going to be flying. And we'll start with the Caroline so I can show you how this works. At 58 on day, so they come on the 6th.
So the 6th, they come roaring in. And then here is 58. And this one we want to be a little more precise with. So at the end of the, let's call it a half a day's movement for the first day. Because remember, they were doing the first. So there's at the end of the 6th for them. And on the 6th, the 3 patrol vessels are going to be here, here, and here. Okay. So then we look and we go, this time it's going to be the full 58. It comes to here. I warned you this would be like our travelers. So here we are on the 7th. And on the 7th, our patrol vessels are here, here, and let's see, 8 right here. Okay, so we're getting closer. And then on the 8th, the Venus shows up here, and they're going to go, we're going to call it half again. We'll put them right at the 29 mark. So this is where they end up on the 8th. And the nearest patrol vessel is, it's dead ahead, but it's moving away from them. So at the end of the 8th, then we have to do, this is going to go to 58. That's going to be right here for the Caroline, dancing through the raindrops. So here's the 8th. Is there anybody nearby? And yeah, look at that. Here's the 8th, and here's the 8th. So on the 9th, there's a very good chance. Wow, look, with all of this ocean, now we can figure out. So at noon, how do we do this? I think what we do is we say, look, at noon, these guys are going to be. Remember, it's 58, so that's going to be 25. This is where they'll be at noon, and meanwhile, at noon, this vessel is going to be right here, and the sighting distance from ship to ship is just 6 millimeters. So from here to here, that's all it is. The other thing we can do is we can cut that value in half. So we were at 58. We'll bring it down to about 15. And we'll bring this one down to about 15. And I think we are with it. We are so close on this one. This guy is moving this way. He's moving this way. They might just miss each other if we back him off a little bit, him off a little bit. When the paths cross, we come back that far, then I really think, let me just zoom in, man. This is how tight this is going to be. I think the British are just going to miss the Revenant. Although no, this is the Caroline. Although they do have somebody that they're escorting. So there's 2 ships. How much are they separated by? I don't know. They may be separated by 6 millimeters. I probably should have declared that before I went through this exercise, because that might have made all the difference in the world. With a sight line of 6. So this is our noon and this is our noon. This is early in the day. We're right at about 7 or 8. A sharp-eyed guy, that's about 9. I think we're just going to miss it on the 9th. And that is the 8th and the 9th, and that's the only one that really has a chance. Because over here, the 9th, again, we're going to be flying low. There's your date of the 9th. And the 9th is, so who's nearby on the 9th? And then we have another 58, so they'll get to right about here. And when they get the word, the distance for sighting here is 16. So when they get to within 16, when they get right there, they'll be notified which direction to go. And on the 9th, the nearest British vessels, so the British vessels are going to be way down here and here, which is way too far away. Oh, is it too far away? So again, 8, 9, he's moving in the wrong direction. That's what it is. And then the 9th up and over here, the Leopard is already going to be all the way back. So we do have one that I think there's a chance. You're saying there's a chance. And the British are coming in from slightly, they're basically just a little bit upwind. What do we call that again? Let me just look that up. When they're reaching. They've got the broad reach. They're not beating just yet. And the French vessel, let's see, so he's there and he's there. If we back him off a little bit, I think he's gonna be too far away. I hate to say it, because I really want this to be a legitimate battle between the Caroline and I gotta go all the way back. The Leopard, the Caroline and the Leopard, which might not be much of a fair fight, particularly given the Caroline has the weather gauge, as they say, 40-gun frigate versus a 50-gun fourth rate. Ooh, that's pretty good. I'm going to do it. I'm going to declare it. And here's how I'm going to do that. I am going to back this guy off to right here. I'm going to back the Caroline off. And we're going to measure the distance between these two vessels. And at dawn on the 8th, then, and it's going to be in open water. So if I move 1 centimeter this one, and 1 centimeter this one, they're going to be separated by a little over 1 centimeter. So if I take it another half to here and another half to here, they are going to be separated by like 7. They're just going to, so this is going to be 7 millimeters difference, which technically is a little too far away. Okay. But if they're separated by 7 millimeters, what does that translate to for the next scale down? On the grand tactical, 1 turn equals half an hour, and movements are made on paper where each 10 millimeter represents 1 kilometer. In this one, 1 centimeter equals 50 kilometers. So they're separated by about 30 kilometers. 30 km. So let's take a look at what the ocean looks like at a distance of 30 kilometers when your grand tactical is 10 millimeters. Well, it's 250 millimeters. Is 25 kilometers. Behold the trackless ocean. Here's how I'm going to justify making a scenario out of this. The leopard is way up here in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. Bear in mind, north is in, I think, that direction. This is northeast, the top of your screen. So the wind is from the top of the screen to the bottom. The prize vessel is separated from the leopard by 30 centimeters. Or, in this tactical scale, every centimeter is 1 kilometer. So we're 30 kilometers separated from each other. That's the prize. And somewhere on this side of the prize, just off the curve of the ocean, just out of sight, is going to be the Caroline. Where is it going to be? Well, I'm going to roll a d6. And then I'm going to roll a d6 to find out how many centimeters away it is. So in the direction of 4... it's going to be 6 centimeters away. So they got a little too far away. So the Caroline itself is going to be right. Oh, there's the 6 right there. In the 4 direction, right there. So there is our little mini scenario in which the leopard is now chasing after the prize and the Caroline. And now we get down to the brass tacks. Does the Caroline want to protect its prize? She absolutely does. In order to get between, she's going to have to cut in this direction. And now we have a scenario. I'm going to play this out. Not today. We've gone far enough. We got our first scenario. I'm going to tape these together and probably give myself a couple of more sheets of paper down here, because as the leopard approaches, the other thing we have to think about is, like, what is the goal here? And if we look at the strategic situation one more time, what we find is that our tabletop is roughly, call it 3, well, we're somewhere right in here. Let's call it 3 centimeters away. That's the port that they're trying to get to. Now, again, bear in mind, at 8 centimeters, we're trying to get to within sighting distance of the island so we can figure out which way we need to go, which means if we check this out, our distance to that is 15. That's 75 kilometers. So these ships, the goal is to get these ships here. There's the prize. He's got to get 75 kilometers closer so that he can get into the shielding of the port batteries here. Fortunately, they're running with the wind directly at their backs, so that should be a lot easier. Now, the real question is, if this is 16, so they were going to be able to go 58 for the day, so if they started here, yeah, nightfall will not make a difference. If they had been sighted way back here, then they may just be trying to escape until nightfall. Maybe they turn to the south, and then it's going to be kind of random whether they can swing back around to get to Mauritius. That's not the case here, but that's one of the things that you consider. Your terrain in naval battles is not just where the water meets the land. It's also things like fog banks, nightfall, and the curvature of the earth. Remember that our terrain is this little bubble, 12 millimeters across, which is all these poor little ants on the piece of paper can see. Maybe not a lot to look at here, but when I play games like this, my mind's eye fills in all those details. Hey, what is that slow moving thing? And that may be the deal, is that our prize may be a bit of a hooker. But like I said, this is a whole different scale of naval war game. So I'm going to need to stop and look at the rules and figure out how to keep this interesting. As we do just this little race. Can the leopard even close the distance in time? I'm not sure. We'll have to do it turn by turn. And I think it's a good bet that one or both of these ships get away, but we don't know until we play the game, which we'll do a week from now. Until then, I'm praying for you.